It's worldwide. Something is up. Listen to this. Queensland, Australia, you've probably been there. April, they put on the books as a law. If a doctor attempts to help a patient with COVID-19 with hydroxychloroquine, that doctor will be put in jail for 6 months.
What?
Yes. In April, they put it on the books. Okay.
Why?
Something is up. If you look at the TGA, let's not fry the U.S. agencies. Let's look at the TGA, the FDA equivalent in Australia. And Australia is interesting. They've been kind of spared of COVID-19. They've been in these draconian lockdowns. They have this huge susceptible population. They're all distributed. They've been in fear for 14 months. The TGA has some guidelines for COVID-19. It must have 24 recommendations. Don't use hydroxychloroquine. Don't use ivermectin. Don't use steroids. Don't use anticoagulants. Don't use... They list everything you should not do. It's like, what should you do? Net answer, nothing.
Wait, okay. So COVID-19 became known to the West in January of 2020. So that was 1 year and 4 months ago. Okay. So how could, with such a short period of time, the health regulators of Australia know to the point where they codified it in a regulation that hydroxychloroquine is not an effective therapy against COVID-19? Like, how could that be known? It couldn't be known, correct?
It couldn't be known. And in fact, there are pieces of the timeline that are suggesting that something is very wrong going on in the world. And whatever's going on, it is worldwide. It is not just U.S. Things are worse in Canada. There are anguishing doctors and nurses in northern EU and in Scandinavia about euthanasia and having the seniors literally just be euthanized. There's some horrible things going on.
Okay, you're completely blowing my mind. I didn't expect this interview at all. I saw your testimony. I thought you asked a really interesting question. I wanted to hear more about it. I did not expect this. This is really shocking. And by the way, for viewers who are wondering, who is this guy? Is he just some random guy who's claiming to be a doctor? Look him up, Peter McCullough. And I think you'll be quite satisfied after your Google search that you have the authority to say the things that you're saying.
I testified under oath. I have 600 publications in the peer-reviewed literature. I'm the president of a major medical society. I'm the editor of 2 major journals. I've headed up 24-day safety monitoring boards in major drug trials and stopped drug trials early for safety reasons. I'm telling you, I have no agenda, but I am deeply concerned that something has gone off the rails in the world. It involves science, it involves the medical literature, it involves a regulatory response, it involves populations kept in fear and in isolation and despair.
Okay, so you've, this is upsetting, but it's also fascinating, I think. You've alluded a couple times to something being up, I think is the phrase that you used. Can you put a slightly finer point on that? Do you believe that NGOs, the enormous nonprofits that have a lot of sway, it seems like, in the public health arena, are exercising influence over COVID policy in the direction that you're describing? Is it that? Is it some international regulatory body? Is it WHO? I mean, like, what is this, do you think?
That's really going to be the goal of investigative reporters, to figure this out. There must be stakeholders, or there must be some fundamental drivers for a groupthink. Now, this is a groupthink. It's in the minds of people.
Is anyone profiting from it?
I have no idea. And it's just, I just focusing on the sick patient right in front of me. Tucker, I can't tell you, but I have seen things in the last year that I can't explain as a doctor. Why are other doctors not helping with a simple illness to help these patients avoid hospitalization and death? Why are they not doing this? There are cases. There's been 3 cases in New York where there have been some seniors and they're struggling in the hospital, and the families find out about ivermectin, a simple drug that's used in the early outpatient realm to reduce viral replication. It's an antiparasitic drug, very safe and effective. And they beg the doctors in the hospital, 3 cases. And the doctors say, no, we're not going to use it. And they say, listen, why not give it a shot? No. They go to a court. They get a court order. And the judge says, listen to the family and give them some ivermectin. In those 3 cases, the seniors survived. There's 2 cases going on right now. There's one in Chicago going on right now where they even come with a court order and the doctors say, no, I'm not going to do it. We're not going to give it. And then they had to somehow enforce the court order to give this poor lady some ivermectin. And they were asking my advice. I said, I think it's too late. I'm not sure she can make it, but let's try to give it a shot. There's another one going on in Detroit. There's something in the minds of doctors.
What are they afraid of? I mean, getting fired would be my first guess. They work for a hospital or a university that won't tolerate dissent, I guess. Is this an analog to what we're seeing in the political sphere, where no one's allowed to deviate from a certain orthodoxy or else they get bounced? Is that kind of what it is?
That's a tractable explanation. There is great fear, I think, in the academic medical centers, medical groups, and others to do anything that's not in line with the general approach that's been laid out by our public health officials. Now, it's more severe in countries outside the United States. So, for instance, in Canada, UK, for instance. I was interviewed the other day by somebody. It was a little slip that came out, which was interesting. He said, well, Dr. McCullough, what do you think about the most recent ruling from the CDC? I said, ruling? I think there's Supreme Court. I go, think about this. The CDC has always given recommendations. And I use the example. I said, listen, the CDC recommends that all of us should eat less than 10% of calories in sugar and saturated fat. That's what they recommend. Is that a ruling? Are we gonna lose our job over that? Are we gonna not be able to go to an NBA game if we don't follow the
food pyramid is federal law. If that was a journalist who asked you that question, let me just apologize on behalf of all of them. It's got to be the most low IQ profession. I mean, really, for